Dr. Gene Kritsky, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
It's good to talk to you. This is a special time of year, of course. I remember back in 2004, many of my audience will. It's 17 years ago. The cicadas, the periodical cicadas, are going to be upon us here very, very shortly in Northern Virginia. And I wonder if you could, as an entomologist, tell us about the billions of cicadas that we're going to see, maybe a little bit about their survival instincts and what the strategy is that what is it that cicadas bring to our environment? And maybe tell us, how many broods are there?
Well, that's a number of questions there, but
Yeah.
let's start with the last question, then move on from there. There are 15 broods of periodical cicadas, 12 17-year broods, and 3 13-year broods. And by a brood, we're talking about a year class. And this is all an arbitrary designation that started back in the 1890s. In 1893, Charles Marlett decided to bring some order to the world of periodical cicadas. By that time, we had 2 different brood systems, and we had another system based on emergence year. And it was really confusing. And they had these charts that would tell you which was which, and it just made it very difficult. And so he basically said, let's agree on something, that every 17-year cicada that comes out in 1893, that's brood 1. Every 17-year cicada brood that comes out in 1894, that's brood 2, and numbers 1 through 17 are reserved for 17-year cicadas. And for every 13-year cicada coming out in 1893, that's brood 18, and 18 through 30 are for 13-year cicadas. So just by saying brood 10, we know that it's a 17-year cicada. And once we did that, then that became really clear and easy to see the progression from emergence year to emergence year, to see what was happening, where they all were. And then that was in the 1883. And then in 1902 was the concerted effort by the USDA to map out brood 10 by sending out 15,000 postcards to postmasters, superintendents of schools, railway station conductors, and they got just shy of 1,000 responses.
Wow.
And that's what generated the map that we have for brood 10. And that's what we're coming out this year.
So the map indicates their locations.
Yes, and they based it. They were able to get data, and they included in their database that we have not only what occurred in 1902, but also all the brood 10 years going back to 1715, which is the first historical record of brood 10. And so that was a nice compendium. In fact, my book Periodical Cicadas, the brood 10 edition, I include all the USDA data in there. Now, some of they're probably gone for some of those counties. And they're probably not, some of the counties aren't represented there, but that's the whole point of this year. And that is with Cicada Safari, we can fill in all those gaps and take out the bad data and what have you if we have enough people helping.
People are excited about the cicadas. I mean, even back as far as 1902 with a mailing from the USDA, I guess people just get kind of excited about this whole thing.
They do, and part of the reason for brood 10 is that brood 10 occurs in we now know 15 states in the District of Columbia. We just had some cicadas emerge from South Carolina for brood 10 year. That's a new one for us. But it also includes many metropolitan areas: Philadelphia, Washington, Baltimore, and Cincinnati, 4 of the largest cities in the eastern U.S. in the late 19th century. And those places had scientists. They had people that were watching this. They were recording things. And so it was quite that's the cornerstone of almost all this early stuff we know about cicada biology comes from brood 10 because of where it was emerging. That's why it gets all the attention today.
Why do cicadas do what they do? What is it behind their kind of process that, captures our attention, and what does it matter to them?
Well, I don't think it matters at all to them per se, but we get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
Periodical cicadas are bugs of history. They're a generational event. If you've experienced this as a little kid, you'll never forget it. Once you experience it as a little kid and you see it again the next time, 17 years later, you could be 7 now, you'd be 24 then, and you're usually disappointed because it doesn't seem to be as big of a thing. The cicadas don't seem to be as big. Well, it's not that the cicadas got any smaller or the numbers got fewer. You got bigger, and so your frame of reference, your yardstick changed. And but I've had parents tell me stories about incidents that occurred in 1936, and then 17 years later, they'll tell it to their kids. And then 17 years later, they're telling it to their grandkids. And now they've got great-grandkids, and they're they're sort of relating these stories. And I know that these people that told me that story, because I've heard about it in 1987, I'm pretty certain she made the woman that relayed this one incident to me. I'm pretty sure she's gone, but I'll bet dollars to donuts that when the cicadas come out, her great grandchildren are going to be telling stories about what their great grandma did in 1936, because she had the good sense to tell me, and I've recorded it now, and they hear it all the time. But I'm sure they remember it as well as a family event. They'll never forget that.
Well, I read in some of your research that over 250 cicadas can be tracked almost per yard. So maybe tell us some other fun facts about cicadas.
Oh, okay. The largest the density of cicadas I've ever found was 356 per square yard.
Okay.
That's a lot of bugs. These aren't little bugs, as you know, Paul. The large species is just shy of 2 inches. That's a big bug, and the little species is about 1.5 inches. So they're there. That's kind of interesting. The loudest we've measured, that I've measured, periodical cicada chorusing is 96 decibels.
Wow.
And that happened to be at a cemetery that's on the the flyway into Cincinnati International Airport, and the jets are coming in at 80. And the cicadas were louder than the jets. That blew me away. In fact, they're so loud. In 1902, when President Theodore Roosevelt gave an address at Arlington National Cemetery, and I'm from North Dakota, and that's part of the reason why Theodore Roosevelt's a hero of mine. After his wife and mother died within a 24-hour period, to console his grief, he bought an interest in a cattle ranch and went out to western North Dakota, where herding cattle, he learned to project his voice. He boxed at Harvard. And so he, barrel chested, he learned to project his voice over a herd of cattle. People here in Indianapolis and in Cincinnati have recounted how when he spoke at some of these gatherings, like at our Fountain Square, Memorial Square, they felt like he was talking to them because he could project so well without artificial amplification, which they didn't have at that time. Yet in 1902 in Arlington Cemetery, the cicadas almost drowned him out.
Wow.
That's how loud they can be.
Wow.
If they can drown out a politician, they must be able to do something.
That's saying something, definitely. So we're going to be seeing them, and if you're out mowing your lawn, you're definitely going to be seeing them and experiencing, but we will be hearing them. They are loud. What is it that the noise represents to other cicadas?
Well, the males gather in chorusing centers. Ecologically, we would call it a lek, and it's spelled L-E-K, where large aggregations of males occur, and then the females move into the population and then mated and so on. They gather in these trees, and they start singing. And other males will hear that singing. They'll go to the same tree. So I have probably 2,000-3,000 of these things in a single tree, all singing. And the intensity, the loudness gets really high, and then it drops a little bit. Then it gets high again. It drops a little bit, and that's of course attracting females. Females are flying in. When the intensity and the loudness drops, it's because the unsuccessful males have decided that the tree across the way may be a better bet. And if you hear this, which you will in your neck of the woods, you can watch the trees. And as the loudness drops a little bit, look what's happening. You'll see all these cicadas flying to either a new branch or a new tree or whatever, because it may have better luck over there. And so that's what's going on. It's all part of that mating process. And the mating ritual is incredible. There's a wonderful response. The male has a call. I'll talk about the large species decim. It's like a, and at that down point, the female can't call. She doesn't have the timbal. She has no sound-making apparatus like the male does. Instead, she responds by flicking her wings. So it's all part of the mating process. The females don't have a sound-making structure like the males do. Instead, they respond by flicking their wings. So the male will make his call, and I'll clap when the wing flick should occur. If he hears that, he turns and walks towards her. He sings again. Gets even closer still. When he gets close enough, he'll go into a second call, and then walks up to her, taps her on the back with one of his two forelegs, and begins the process of physical mating. What's kind of interesting is the competition with other males. If there's a second male nearby and he heard that female flick, he'll start singing just before that downward note comes in the first male, and that interrupts it. So the female doesn't flick for his wings. He flicks for male number two. She flicks for male number two. And so there's all sorts of competition with someone moving in on their date, so to speak.
And
And
so the up and down of the tone is what creates this din.
yes, and
Uh-huh.
it's constant. If you hear it,
Yeah.
and there's three species that'll be emerging simultaneously, and they each have their own call. At the top register, you'll hear almost this constant, almost like a flute-like call or hollow call, and that's to me it sounds like what a Foley artist would have used in a 1950s B science fiction movie for the flying saucers.
I can. I'm.
Now, do you
I'm
get that?
seeing. I got it absolutely.
So for the younger viewers, you've got to go out and experience the what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's Magis Cicada's septum decim that's making that call. Magis Cicada casts an eye as a series of buzzes and clicks individually, but as a group, it's a shh. So you'll hear that high-pitched sort of constant sound at the top, and you'll hear the cast eye in between. And then the rarest of the three, which is decula, septum decula sounds like a rotary sprinkler head on its own. And that they probably account for only 5 to 10% of the population. So you'll usually hear those two, and then you might be able to hear the pulses of decula once in a while as well, if they happen to be in that area.
Well, Dr. Kritsky, it may be anathema to an entomologist, but you could eat cicadas too. And so I wonder, maybe you have a favorite recipe that you might be, enjoying with cicadas. But what other value do cicadas have to the world?
I don't eat them anymore.
Okay.
I haven't eaten cicadas since 1987, and that's because of what the values the cicadas have for me.
Yes.
They got me tenure.
Right.
So they were career making for me.
Yes.
If you are so inclined that you want to eat them, you want to go out and collect them while they're teneral, all white, hanging from the shell before they've hardened. Otherwise, it's like eating the tail end of a shrimp.
Okay.
That part they hold on to while you dip in the cocktail sauce. That's one of the important things. And when you do that, you want to make sure you collect females, because the females are filled with eggs. That's where the flavor is. The males the abdomen's mostly hollow, so there's more nutrition and flavor in the female than there are the eggs. And I'll answer in advance the next question: what do they taste like?
Yeah.
And to me, they taste like not a name brand, but a generic brand of cold canned asparagus.
Okay.
Because they're sucking on tree roots.
Uh-huh.
So they're going to have a very green flavor, and that So if hopefully, I thought people are going, after hearing that, will be interested, but not necessarily running out to kill every cicada they can find to try eating them.
Right. No, better to track them. And speaking of tracking them, you and your team have developed a wonderful app. My wife and I have installed it. Cicada Safari is the name of it. We're going to put links up to where our audience can find the app. Great. Tell us a little bit about the app, because I think that's an important step in this. And you referenced 1902 and the gathering and the interest. Well, there's a lot of interest today, and the app now allows us to kind of help you, an entomologist, with this study.
And it's not just helping me; they're helping my colleagues all over the country. I share the data with everybody. My good friends Chris Simon and John Cooley up at the University of Connecticut, they're part of this. My friend Mike Raup at the University of Maryland, he's promoting this as well, as are the Ohio Biological Survey, the Indiana Academy of Science, cicadamania.com. I've got the University of Tennessee promoting this, University of Kentucky promoting this. The naturalists for the Museum of Natural History in North Carolina are going to be helping. It's really turned into a fantastic thing, and I can tell you're the first to know this. Our 90,000th download happened this morning.
Wow, 90,000!
90,000.
My goodness,
adding 3,000 a day right now. We'll probably break 100,000 downloads. I'm
congrats! That's wonderful news. That's great. I think it's great for science, great for your team.
Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, crowdsourcing with cicadas goes back to the 1840s.
Okay, even before.
A man from Baltimore by the name of Gideon B. Smith used to write little letters to the editor and columns for newspapers, and he'd send them to regional newspapers, or he'd put them in what would be the national weeklies, and they would be reprinted. He'd say things like, "I expect the cicadas to emerge in your area this spring. I would appreciate it if your readers send me notice." And by the time he died in 1867, he had documented all the known broods, not the full distribution of their extent of their full distribution, but documented every brood that we had. And so it's like I feel part of this legacy. And so when I first started tracking cicadas, the first time I was just driving around in a car looking to see what I could hear, and that eventually evolved into using a answering machine on a cell phone that broke the first day. They came out in big numbers in Cincinnati because I must have had hundreds of calls coming in that jammed the tape. And that was in 87. 2004, emails. I was getting an email a minute during the working hour of the first day after they emerged. And then our 4-year acceleration of Brood 10 that happened in 2017, I asked people to send me photographs from their smartphone. And that's when the light came on. What a tool. Because one of the problems with citizen science is verification. Are we really getting the data we need? Just today, for example, we had a click beetle submitted. We got a lot of, not a lot, but a half a dozen or so of June beetles submitted, and that makes sense because they're coming out of the ground. They're brown like the nymph. And if you're not an entomologist, at least they're participating. So every photograph that comes in is examined by human eyes and verified to be a periodical cicada. And once approved, it goes on our map. And even once it's approved, I go through all the declined ones to make sure we didn't miss one, and I go through all the approved ones as best I can to make sure we didn't accept one that's not right. And so we're trying to maintain that. But the worry this year, we're expecting now with 90,000 participants, the potential of 70,000 photographs with this year. But it is we tested it with brood 8. And that's a small brood in eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania, extreme northern West Virginia. 5,721 verified cicada observations. Last year was the real telling point. We got it set up for brood 9 with an addition. You can also submit 10-second videos. And with the videos, you've got audio. And with the audio, I've got the calls, and I can tell the species from the calls, and and also tells they're mating there. That's what's going on. That's part of the whole mating process. So that's a whole new level. So if someone has cicadas singing in a tree, point your iPhone at your tree and take a 10-second video, because that's what we need. You don't need to find the cicada singing. Just give us the calls. And so last year was an interesting year because of COVID-19. A lot of us couldn't go out into the field like we'd always planned to. So we set up the Cicada Safari, was geared up for its second test, and and brood 9 occurred in southern West Virginia, western Virginia, and northwestern North Carolina. And so we contacted the major media outlets and said, we use this app, whatever. And the first reports came in from Georgia. They weren't supposed to be in Georgia. Then South Carolina, they weren't supposed to be there. Then Missouri. What was going on here was really weird, because in the past, when we had a cicada emerge, all of us, my colleagues, we'd all hightail it down to where we knew the birds were, and we'd map the boundaries and all that other stuff. We never thought about looking 500 miles away. And so all of a sudden we get these reports, and once we got a report outside of the known zone, we'd send press releases to their media outlets to what's really happening here. And what happened was, not only did brood 9 emerge in good numbers like we were expecting, but four other broods, Paul, emerged off cycle.
Wow. We
had a 13-year cicada emerge after 9 years. We had a 17-year cicada emerge after 13 years. We had several brood 10 cicadas emerge a year early. That happened in your area, and then the Washington, D.C. area, and Baltimore, here in Cincinnati, also Indianapolis, Louisville. And then we had just a few hundred brood 5 cicadas emerge 4 years late. And it was amazing. It's like this may have been going on all the time, but we never knew it because there would be no publicity in an area where they weren't expected. And so this is opening up a whole new area of thinking. Does this happen a lot? The key thing, and we've seen this before. We've seen 4-year accelerations before. We've seen 1-year early accelerations and 4-year, but not all in 1 year. And so that told us that the app was providing us some really good information, and we had just shy of 8,000 records for last year.
Wow!
And so we did all that gearing up for the big one, the big Kahuna, the big tamale. What do you want to call it?
Yeah,
that's this year. And where, as I say, the interest, and I'm just tickled at the interest, and I'm already receiving between 400 and 600 pictures a day. First of nymphs, because people are all gardening and they're uncovering the nymphs. And I see garden trowels and hands in the red-eyed cicada. And just last week we got our first individuals emerging in extreme northern Georgia, which was expected, and then east of Chattanooga. And we've had some emerge now from central North Carolina. We weren't expecting those. And then South Carolina, a few from South Carolina. That was a surprise. And then, of course, College Park, Maryland, we had reports of a few individuals, and now we're getting a lot of course, from all these areas, a lot of nymphs. But it was just 3 nights ago that we had really good numbers in west of Tyson in greater Washington, D.C. But the key, looking ahead, I see 83-degree temperatures tomorrow night in the south. I expect they're going to start popping, and the mass emergence will start in Georgia tomorrow. So we're sort of tensing ourselves for what might happen.
Bracing. Well, of course, the app has the GPS functionality and geolocation, so you're able to track that kind of on a very specific basis. So how narrowly can you track the emergence? Is it kind of by square mile? Is it by kind of almost square block? Or how defined is that?
If you are using the app and you want to see where cicadas are, you can go all the way down to the street.
Ah, okay.
And even where in the middle of the block. It depends on the accuracy of the GPS. But for brood 8 and brood 9 that emerged the last 2 years, my wife and I went out to the brood areas, and we've tested it on a number of sites where we had, cicadas reported here. Are they really there? And they were. And so when for the last 2 years, we 100% accuracy on the place that's submitted. And then we did testing as well. We took photographs and saved them and then submitted them later for other locations to see how that would work. And as long as that metadata is in your photograph, we get the correct metadata.
Well, Dr. G. Kritsky, what a pleasure it's been to talk to you. You're just doing some wonderful work, but what a fun conversation, what a fun activity. Just go out and get this app and join in kind of this research with Dr. Kritsky and his team. Thanks for your time. I know you're very busy. We sure appreciate the chance to talk to you, and happy cicada safaring.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.